Hey, we're back to validate our email input this time. And if you see what I have highlighted here, I've already created some global variables to access our input box here for our email, and then also to access the area in that span where we're going to display our messages, either our check mark if we're all good, or a red X and then a message on what they need to fix if it's not good. Okay, so go ahead and copy those over and then come on down. Remember, you can pause the video at any time if you need to duplicate your code. Oh, and look, see, I have to record multiple of these because I always mess up. And then, so it's like I'm teaching this like 18 times. I don't know if you've ever tried to record a tutorial video, but I'm going to tell you, it's interesting. Okay, let's create a new function called validate email. Now, what's going to make our email valid? Our email, remember, we're not using any server-side processing, so there's nothing on the back end that's actually going to check and make sure that is a legitimate email. We are doing front-end processing, so what we're going to say makes a valid email is emails always have an @ sign, right? So we need an @ sign, and I don't know about you, but I have never seen an email address that didn't have at least one character in front of the @ sign. So we need an @ sign not in first position, okay? So it needs to be somewhere in the string of what the user types. And then all emails have a dot and something, .com, .edu, .org, etc., etc. So we need a period, and we're going to say, and then 3 characters, okay? Now, I know there's exceptions to that, but, you know, we got to have rules somewhere. Okay, so what are we going to need to know to be able to complete this task? Well, we need to know what the user typed, right? We can access the input with this variable, but we can't access what the user typed without getting the value. So let's create a new variable called user email, and that's what happens when we access email input and we get the value, okay? Now, you may not have realized this, but we also need to know how many characters are in the string, which is the email that the user typed. So let's do num characters, and that's going to be what happens when we take user email, which is the value that the user typed, and then we get the length, okay? Now, there's lots of different ways that we could validate here. For this one, we're going to do a little differently than we even do the password one. But for this one, we're going to create a variable called valid. And basically, this is going to be like our check variable. We're going to say that if it's 1, it needs to give an error. So 1 gives an error, because right now we've got it set to 1, 1's bad. But we're going to say 0 is okay. So the user has a valid email address if the valid is set to 0. So that would give us a way to check these criteria. We can check, undo. We can check for the @ sign, we can check for the period, and if either one of those conditions are not met, we can make sure valid is set to 1 so that we can give an error to the user. Okay, to kind of show you what that looks like, let's go ahead and type that code towards the end of the function. Let's add if valid is exactly equal 1. Then we're going to take the email input and change its class name to error. And then we're going to take that message and change the text content. We're going to display that red X, which is stored in fixit, and concatenate that with please enter a valid email address. Now, if valid is not 1, then we're okay. So we'll say else email input dot class name is set to empty. Now, why are we doing this? Well, let's say they had typed something in that was invalid, and it changed the class name to error, which put a red box on there, but then they corrected it. Well, if we don't have a way to change it and remove that red, the user will still think that they're wrong, even though they're not wrong. That makes sense. So let's change our text content, and we're just going to display that all good variable. Okay? Now, the next bit of code we're going to type in between here, okay? So in between where you declared your variables, we need a way to go through here and access every single character, not the end, because we said, hey, that @ sign better not be in the first position. But we need to access this and check and see if it's an @ sign. We need to do this M, check and see if it's an @ sign. The E, check and see if it's an @ sign. And then, oh, there's an @ sign, so we could change valid to 0 to say, hey, yes, you have met the criteria. So we're going to learn a new method to do this. The new method is called ChartAt, and don't type this, okay? This is just for demonstration purposes. So ChartAt basically will return the character in the index location. So if we put a 0 here and this was our string, name@domain.com, ChartAt 0 would return in, ChartAt 1 would return A, 2 would return M, so on and so forth. Okay, so ChartAt's going to be really useful for us to move through all these items in the string and determine if any of them have an @ sign. Okay, so what this looks like, I'm just going to load this up and I want to show you in console what happens. Okay, so if I did enter name@domain.com, now you can see in console, I want to pull this over so you can see as well. So it started at 1, so it started printing at the first index location, which was A, and then it printed an M, then an E, then an @ then a D. Okay, so you see how that ChartAt is printing or returning what is at that specific index location. Okay, again, don't type this part. That was just there for demonstration purposes. Now let's move back over to what we are working on. Okay, let me get my screen back the way I like it. Okay, so we need a loop. We're going to say for var I equal to 1, and then we need I less than numchar, and then we'll do I++ each time. Okay, so in here we'll say if user email dot ChartAt, that's our method, at position I is exactly equal an @ sign, then we want to set our valid to 0 because valid's good. Valid, we're saying, is okay. All right, let's take a look and make sure, well, no, let's go back and add validate email to our validation form function. Remember, this is the function that is executing all of our other functions, and that way we just have one event listener. Okay, so let's refresh the page, and then if I say name and click submit, it says please enter a valid email address because I don't have an @ sign. But if I put that @ sign in there, we get the check mark. Okay, but we're still not finished because this is not a valid email address either, right? Okay, so below that for loop, and well, after that for loop and before our if statement, let's add another if statement. And this if statement, we just need to check to see if we have a period and then 3 characters. How could I do that using the length of the user email? So user email, let's use our ChartAt method again. And remember, we don't necessarily have to put a number there. We put a variable there in this loop, but we could also put a mathematical equation. What if we did numchar minus 4? Okay, so that would return the length, then subtract 4 from that, and that would give us 1, 2, 3 characters, and then a period. Okay, so if at numchar minus 4, if that is not equal to a period, then we set valid equal to 1. So now valid is giving an error again. Okay, so let's try this, refresh it. If I do name at blah, 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 and click submit, nope, that's not good. But now if I do a .com on the end and click submit, I'm valid. Okay? So I hope this makes sense. Again, you can pause this video and copy your code. Don't forget about your console when you're troubleshooting. And then come back for the next video where we look at passwords. Fun, fun.